most of the time you are going to be prepping the diets and feeding the animals and cleaning the tanks because you're cleaning the display that people see, and then you're also cleaning what's behind, all the filters and life support. At the end of the day, it's not the highest paying job. I don't know if people have that assumption about animal care, but it's definitely, it is more of a passion job.
Today, I have the honor of interviewing Jena Martinez to learn about what it's like to work as an aquarist. Jena, welcome.
Hello, happy to be here.
Yeah, so Jena, we always like to start off with three questions, kind of get to know you a little bit. The first one is, in your own words, what do you do? The second one, where do you live? And the third one, as a kid, what did you want to be when you grow up?
Okay, so in my own words, what do I do? I would just say that I take care of fish and other aquatic animals while educating the public about them. And I live in Corpus Christi. When I was growing up, I definitely wanted to be uh, a biologist of some sort, doing animal rehabilitation and conservation or something like that. So I'm just in there, just on a different aspect of that field.
Gotcha. That's awesome. And Jena, tell us like a little bit more about the field. How long have you been working in it?
Um, let's see. I started at the Texas State Aquarium in 2016. It's been about 7.5 years. So I worked there for 6 years, and then I'm at another facility now for the last year and a half.
And what made you get into the career path? Like, how did you first get your start?
I studied at Texas A&M College Station. I
Whoop.
did wildlife and fisheries. Yep, whoop. So I studied wildlife and emphasized in ecology and conservation because I was hoping to go that research or rehabilitation route. And then the truth is, I moved home to do one last online class, and I just applied to be an intern at the Texas State Aquarium, actually hoping for the rehab department or birds and mammals, but what I got was fish and herps, so fish and reptiles and amphibians. And so I started as an intern there, and I just fell in love with it and stayed doing that since then. So yeah, I studied animals and wildlife and then kind of accidentally fell into specifically fish.
Gotcha. And are there any degrees or certifications that you truly need to get started with this job?
So it is a job where, like, for example, volunteering and experience is definitely highly valued, but there are a lot of places that still will require either a bachelor's degree just in general or maybe some sort of biology degree. So if you're interested in fish specifically, I would definitely go a biology route if you can. My wildlife and fisheries worked out well for me too. I learned a little more broad about fish and then also other animals because again, I didn't know exactly where I was going to go with that. So yeah, I would always try to go in that general direction, but there are a lot of opportunities where you won't be necessarily penalized if you're not a marine biologist.
Gotcha. And are there any, you mentioned marine biologist and some other titles. So for what you do specifically, are there any other titles that this position goes by, or is it just mainly just aquarist?
I guess it just depends on the facility that you work for. I was at an aquarium in the fish and reptile department, so I basically was an aquarist. We had more fish than reptiles, but otherwise you might just be a keeper, so a reptile keeper or a bird keeper.
Hmm.
Um, that's what they would call you probably at a zoo, like a gorilla keeper or something like
Yeah.
that, or a husbandry assistant, a husbandry specialist. What you're doing is animal husbandry. So,
Gotcha. And tell me a little bit more about what a day in the life looks like. What time do you go to work? What time do you come back? Obviously, it's in person, I'm assuming. So tell
mhm.
me like a little bit about like what your day looks like as an
Yes.
aquarist.
Um, so I work Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 4. So 10 to 4 because we're a public education center. I work at the University of Texas Marine Science Institute in Port Aransas, and they have a public education center that's open to the public. So that's why those hours are kind of weird. And it is a little bit different at this place. I'm the only Aquarius there, and so it's a little weird that I have a weekend and there's not someone there necessarily in my place on those weekend days. But the way that our systems are set up, we have security that walks through. There's not too much that can go wrong on those days. But on another at another facility like a larger aquarium, there will be someone else there on those days. So a lot of times you might work on a Sunday or a Saturday. I work on Saturdays. You have to end up working on holidays. And so your schedule can be a little weird like that. You definitely still get time off and things like that, but there might be days that most people get off that you are not able to have off, just so you can make sure everything is alive and well. But yeah, I basically every day can be pretty different. I come in and first thing we walk around, make sure everything is alive and well, and kind of take mental notes on what should be addressed that day, whether it's just cleanliness or medical that maybe needs to be addressed, or a lot of things need to be fixed here and there. So yeah, it's a very wide range of things you might be doing. There's a lot of equipment and life support to be maintained. So that can be electrical or that can be plumbing. So besides just cleaning the tanks and feeding the animals, there's lots of other things that need to be maintained and ordered and reordered and redesigned sometimes. So there's pretty much an endless list of things that you could be doing.
Gotcha. And so if you had to tell me like the top three specific tasks, which you'd say like occupy like 80% of your day, which ones would those be?
Most of the time you are going to be prepping the diets and feeding the animals and cleaning the tanks, because you're cleaning the display that people see, and then you're also cleaning what's behind all the filters and life support. So I would say feeding and cleaning is mostly what you're doing. So not always the most glamorous things to be doing, but and then at the education center, a lot of the rest of the day is talking to people that are coming in and telling them about the fish and um, explaining the habitats that these people aren't used to seeing. Most of them are visitors from out of the city or the state. So, yeah, feeding, cleaning, and education.
Gotcha. And what animals do you get to, you know, clean their habitat and engage with on a daily basis?
Yeah. So at my last job at the Texas State Aquarium, a larger place, we were doing fish, invertebrates, reptiles, amphibians. So I got a wider array of species over there, including um, alligators, frogs, snakes. My favorite was the iguana, and then of course tons of species of fish and invertebrates are stingrays and sharks, sea turtles. So all of those really cool, fun animals. And then now I have just fish and invertebrates, but within that, there's still tons of different species. And what's really cool in the Gulf of Mexico, we get all of our species, we collect them all right from basically where we're at, where our building is sitting right by the beach and the bay. And we have an education research vessel that goes out and collects animals for like kids on field trips and things like that. And I get to keep a lot of those animals. So we actually have a really diverse array of fish that we bring in. So just lots of small fish, big fish, puffer fish, crabs, stingrays. So yeah, it's really a lot of different animals that we have to figure out how to take care of.
Yeah, absolutely. And has there ever been one where you're like, I've never seen this, or like, wow, this one is so rare. Like, I can't believe we got one.
Um, yeah, I thought I knew most of the fish that we had around here, but there's still tons that they pull up that we have to flip through the books and figure out what they are. And there are some that we have kind of like trial and error figured out, like, okay, these ones don't do as well in an aquarium or in this
Mm.
situation, or they're too small or they're too big. There's been one fish our boat captain caught on his own trip offshore. Is called a spotfin hogfish. It's a really bright red and yellow fish that you mainly see like way farther out on coral reefs, but he happened to get one. And so we have that fish, and that's kind of a pretty cool find that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of mentioned, you know, you go to the book sometimes. a question that we usually ask guests is what tools or technologies do you use as part of your job? Correct
Hmm.
me if I'm wrong, and if you do use some like certain technologies, or if not just technologies, but resources like books or like tools
Hmm.
that you
Um,
engage with on a daily basis.
I would say I'm using Google a lot for sure. We have questions that we just have to like start searches, how to take care of this animal or how to treat this illness. We have there's digital record keeping programs that we'll use to record all the animals that we get in, if we move them from place to place or if they're treated with something. So that would be a tool. Um, we have lots of like places that we're ordering equipment from are always good resources if something like breaks and I'm not super familiar with how it is, you can always ask the manufacturer. So I would just say having contacts is helpful. I guess so since you are doing kind of like small scale plumbing and like dealing with things that are electrical, it's always good to find people that can help you with that too, because I'm obviously not a certified plumber or electrician. So I have learned a lot from having all the systems that we have. So I don't know if there's any other like certifications of things like that that you could do that would definitely be helpful. There's life support certifications that you can get, and you can that would put you higher on your resume for sure. Having certifications like that, being able to work at like larger facilities and knowing how to use those more in-depth systems. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because it really what the question is asking is like, if let's say I'm really interested in coming into this field, and I was like, okay, like I really want to be a competitive applicant, right? Like, what kind of things like could I be more familiar with in like business jobs? It looks like, Excel, maybe some like
Hmm.
more specific softwares,
Right.
communication skills and things like that. Like so there's like all certifications for that.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, for this position in particular, obviously, like you mentioned, like it is a lot of maintenance, right? Like you
Hmm.
are engaging with like a lot of those like little like plumbings and like cleaning. So like just being familiar with those types of things
Hmm.
like could be the difference that someone, getting
Yeah.
selected to work at the state aquarium, for example, over somebody who has the similar experience, which is without those tools or experiences.
Yeah. Which is where just experience comes in, just starting as a part-timer somewhere or a volunteer so that you can say you have experience working on all those things. But as far as
Mhm.
specific uh like certifications, I would say the life support operator certification. And there are, as far as like software, you can actually, there are like system design programs that are helpful. So that would probably make you look pretty good as well if you could design a whole system from the ground up, because that happens a lot in places. They're going to redo things or add things.
Gotcha. And Jenna, tell me what parts of your job are most exciting and interesting to you, and which ones are maybe harder, more emotionally challenging, or just boring?
The coolest thing is just getting to work with animals, and getting to work with so many different animals that a lot of people don't ever see or know exist or get to work with. And then just taking care of them every single day, you have to really pay close attention. So it's pretty cool that at some point you'll know like this exact fish likes to be in this spot. He only eats this. And sometimes just like knowing everything about each individual is pretty cool. And then at the same time, what's challenging about that, especially with fish, is that there is a lot less information about fish compared to other animals like in zoos. Your bigger, more popular, easy to access animals, I guess. So when it comes to like illness or disease, there's information out there, but as an animal, like they're the least able to show you that something is wrong. So
Right.
that's probably the most challenging part, is when you come to a problem that doesn't have a obvious solution. You have to get pretty creative and um, trying to figure out how to fix those problems. That can lead to the emotional side of things, things do die and sometimes things don't work
Yeah.
out. And that can be natural causes, or that can be a disease that maybe they felt to in the aquarium that they wouldn't have in the wild, because at the end of the day, it's not natural to be in an enclosed, system versus out in the wild. So sometimes things do happen, but we just take that to the next time and take what we learned and hopefully do better next time.
Gotcha. And Jenna, tell me, are you able to clock out, when you're done with your shifts, do you get to go home and just kind of relax, or are you on call still, or do you have to like still think about work and like you're working on some other things?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's kind of half and half, I would say, and it might depend on where you work. At my last job, which I loved at the Tech State Aquarium, at bigger facilities like that, there's just more that you're responsible for on any given day, and a little bit more on call of a situation. In the middle of the night, you might have to go in if something's overflowing or something goes wrong. So, and there were more, those larger animals that you might be a little more worried about if something was going on, versus like a little fish, that you still worry about. But there were more bigger things that we had going on there. I still would be technically on call at this job now. If something went wrong, I would have to go in. Again, just the way the systems are set up, there's not a lot that can go wrong, and that's a little hard to explain. But um, for the most part, I am able to go home and turn it off. It's a lot more simple of a place, but yeah, so it's kind of it's pros and cons. You love the animals so much and it's awesome working with them, but then of course that makes you worry more and or hope that you
Yeah.
locked the door. You think about it, did I lock that door, or did
Yeah.
I close that valve or whatever? So yeah, uh I would say about 50-50 on that.
As an Aquarist, would you say that in general, you do have more of a flexible schedule? Obviously, since you're working, you're kind of a one gal show, where you're at right now. But typically, in those bigger aquariums, would you say it's kind of flexible hours and like employees have more leverage to, pick certain shifts, or is it pretty set?
Um, I would say it's pretty set. It can change, but it's uh not usually up to you. It's usually just up to how many people you have on the team, or what's going on that needs more attention, or what the schedule of the aquarium is. Sometimes the aquarium schedule might change, opening and closing, and you have to stay later or come in earlier. Um, so I would say it fluctuates, but you definitely are still expected, to be there for your full 40 hours or whatever it is. So I don't know, and it probably just depends on the place that you work, how flexible they are with time off and things like that. And that usually again depends on the rest of the team and who's able to cover you if you're gone.
And are there any busy seasons? You kind of mentioned it a little bit. And if so, which parts of the year are typically busiest?
Definitely. So it's tourism, right? So people are visiting the aquarium when they come to visit Corpus. So summer is busier, and some holidays are busier. Not like on the holiday itself, we might be slower, but on that weekend, it's going to be busy. So spring break is busy. So uh, that's kind of the give and take too. You might have Christmas off one year, and then the next year you have to work on Christmas. So they try to kind of have everybody flip flop, so you're not always there on those days. But yeah, busy season is just holidays and summertime. So
Gotcha. And what would you say, Jenna? You've also kind of alluded to this. What do people underestimate about this profession?
I think that you would think that all there is to it is the feeding and cleaning, but there's definitely a lot more to it than that. Knowing everything about all the animals and you can't just put an animal in any tank. Like it's pretty specific where they're going to thrive and what
Mm,
other animals they can be with and what they need to eat and the filtration that's required. And then with that, knowing how to maintain all of those things, knowing what to do when the power goes out or things go wrong, how you're going to fix it, how you're going to make sure things are still alive if something breaks and you don't have what you need. So there's a lot of problem solving, I guess, and creativity. And yeah, I don't know how else to explain it other than that, but there really is just like endless things that need to be done other than cleaning and feeding.
yeah, it sounds like it's sort of like a spin-off show, like a sitcom where every day you're like, oh, like this fish came in and like, oh, this day like we have this fish and we have to figure
Yes.
this out.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Every day there's something new to tackle. And if it's a good day, that's great too. And then there's something you can try to like create or make better, so that you can have this other type of fish that's like harder to take care of or something like that. So um yeah.
Gotcha. And what would you say people overestimate about this profession?
So at the end of the day, it's not the highest paying job um out there. So I don't know if people have that assumption about animal care, but it's definitely, and you can, there's competitive jobs out there. You can find ones that are better, but it is more of a passion job. You're definitely there because you really want to be there.
Yeah,
So I guess people might overestimate that it's just always fun and games, and that there's not as much of that behind the scenes grueling emotional mental challenge.
gotcha. Yeah. And so, Jenna, if I wanted to get into this profession, what is the fastest way to get in? Especially if I'm someone who comes from a non-traditional background and I just want to get my foot in the door.
I would definitely just say volunteering, because you're in there, you're seeing everything that's happening, you're learning, and then those folks are learning about you and knowing your work ethic, and then they want to teach you more, and then you have more experience, and then that's kind of a good foot in the door to maybe a part-time job, and then maybe you just keep going from there. Um, or just having lots of volunteer experience anywhere else, and then they see that and see that you're a hard worker and dedicated. You can also, maybe get a job at a fish store or somewhere else. That's kind of a good way to learn a little bit about that too, and then come
Mhm.
in with a little bit of knowledge and you're not completely starting from zero. Or just, there's a lot of ways to kind of self teach a little bit and get you to that first level of understanding. So, but I would say the biggest thing is to volunteer.
Gotcha. And are there any specific fields that you would say people are coming from before they get into this profession? Like, is it random or are there themes?
I would say it's mostly people that are wanting to do this sort of thing from the get-go. They might have like a college background that isn't related, but typically you usually get people from another animal facility or from something else to do with animals. But you do see a lot of, like, maybe you're an aquarist and then you move on to research or doing the rehabilitation or working on some sort of project on a boat or something like that. I guess just marine biology, research, conservation. That's all I can think of kind of
Hmm.
people that are like rotating through.
Gotcha. And what does somebody have to be good at and like doing in order to be good at this job? Like, in other words, what has to come easily to you, in your opinion?
I would say problem solving is just a big one. Um, and just being able to try again and rethink and just taking responsibility, practical thinking, and a little bit of organization. Although there's all kinds of people, type A, type B, that you'll find in this job, but to some degree there needs to be organization. Otherwise, things will get left undone and things will go badly. So organization and critical thinking, I guess I would say.
Right. And I mean, animals are depending on you, right, to be
Right.
organized and remember to, when to
Yes.
feed and when to clean, all those things.
Absolutely.
And how long, in your opinion, how long does it usually take for someone to get really good at this job?
That's a good question. Some people are really uh gifted, or maybe they came in with lots of more education, so it might not take as long, but generally I'd say at least a few years to several years to be like really knowledgeable. And it just depends on what you're, if you're focusing on one type of fish, it may not take as long to be pretty
Hmm.
confident in that fish, but if you're, you're in charge of all different kinds of fish, it's going to take longer to be um I guess more higher up there on all of those things
Hmm.
combined.
Gotcha. Yeah. It depends on the fish
Yeah.
and the number of.
Yes.
Gotcha. And are there levels to this position, Jenna? Like, is there a promotion path from entry to maybe like some of the higher, like I'm assuming probably research positions that you can hold?
That will again depend on where you are. Typically, yes, you could start as a part-time husbandry assistant, and then you might be an aquarist, and then you might be an aquarist two, or a senior aquarist. And that is as you're getting better, having more knowledge, more able to
Mhm.
figure things out on your own. And then above that, there are some managerial, the curator, the assistant curator, director of animal care. So there is kind of that ladder, but it will depend on, just who else is working there and when those things are available. I wouldn't say it's a guaranteed
Mhm.
ladder that you can climb. So there is a lot of people, okay, I've reached here, and at this place at this time it doesn't look like this is going to become available, so you might move on to another place where it is available. So yeah, and different places will have different lateral opportunities, like you mentioned, the research, or different ways that you can go. So yes, I would say yes, it's not going to be the same everywhere.
Gotcha. And what would you say the average salary is for someone at your level? And you can provide a range if it's even if it's broad.
It is pretty broad. I would say as a higher level aquarist, that's not quite like managing yet. So a higher level aquarist, I would say anywhere from 30 to 50,000. Um, so and that's kind of, and I may be wrong, but it seems across the board that that's pretty much as high as it gets until you move on higher than that.
Gotcha. And after that, what would you say the ranges change to?
I don't have as much um knowledge on that. The managerial positions are maybe 50, 60. Maybe higher depending on where you're at. But it all kind of evens out, with like the cost of living and things like that. Above that, directors, CEOs, they're obviously going to be making a lot more. But
Hmm.
of course, there's less of those positions available.
Gotcha. And it's a good point. Obviously, there's so there's only so many aquariums, right? Like across
Hmm.
the nation and in your particular state. I mean, we're very lucky that, obviously Texas, we have like a really pretty established like coastline. And we do get to, I mean, I'm from San Antonio and we have a pretty tiny one, but Houston, Dallas has a really amazing aquarium.
Hmm.
But it kind of depends, right, on the institution. Like it depends, what city you're in and kind of like what the culture
Yeah.
is, or maybe like what positions even are available.
The funding that they get,
Yeah.
the sponsors that they have, the Texas State Aquarium is nonprofit. So not all some aquariums are, but a lot of them are for profit. So that's going to make a difference too.
We talked about it early in the podcast, kind of what fields do people come from? Are there any fields that people move on to? Like what kind of work do they go into after they're an
Mhm.
aquarist? Are there any themes or can they just springboard into anything?
I would say probably the same things that I mentioned before, moving on to research, or uh I have a friend who now works for Texas Parks and Wildlife, so she takes care of fish at their hatchery, so similar, but a little bit different, more conservation and research based, more field work. That's mainly what I can think of, but sometimes people might completely switch to real estate or something else. Maybe they've had their fun 5 to 10 years in the field, and then it was time for something new. Maybe they needed a more regular schedule, or so it ranges. There's people that will do it for their whole life, and there's people that it's a little section of their life. So
Gotcha. And we kind of mentioned it as well before, and you talked about certifications, but I just want to give you the opportunity again to shout out any other resources, like any books, programs, certifications that you recommend for somebody who wants to get into this profession. And are there also maybe any popular ones that you would not recommend?
there's not any I can think of that I wouldn't recommend. There are, and I'm sorry I don't have any specific like books or anything, but there are lots of books that you can look up about like lots of books that maybe a hobbyist that has aquariums at home might use. It's the same principles. It's just you're going to learn a little more at an aquarium on a bigger scale, but it's the same sort of basic knowledge. So any sort of books like that. There are also like conferences and different things like that that you can go to. I believe you can just sign up and go. I don't think you have to be in the field already. So that would be a really good thing to go do and talk to people that are in the job and
Hmm.
listen to the presentations about stuff that's going on in the field right now. So
Yeah,
that would be the best thing I can think of.
awesome. And transitioning into our last question here, which I think is one of my favorite ones as well, is what would you tell your younger self when you were at the beginning of your career?
I know there's a lot to learn, but just keep at it. And someday you'll know a lot more than you thought you ever could about fish, or that you'd be doing it by yourself somewhere without much oversight. I just don't give up. Pay close attention, ask questions. You do have to do a little bit of like research and learning on your own. While you're being trained, because there's just so much going on and there's so much to know. So just to take initiative and just keep at it.
So, Jenna, where can people reach out and or follow along with your work?
So I work for the University of Texas Marine Science Institute. So you can follow that Facebook, and it's exactly what I just said, University of Texas Marine Science Institute. And then I'm happy to share my work email if anyone has any work related questions or would like advice. I'm happy to help. So that email is going to be Jena, Jena dot Floyd, Floyd at austin.utexas.edu.
Awesome. Jenna, thank you so, so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And this is really niche and like awesome job. And I'm glad we're gonna have it on site.
Me too. Yeah, thank you guys for asking. It's fun to share.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we can better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!